Hello everyone, welcome back to thermodynamics subject. In previous session, I've introduced you the Kelvin Planck statement of second law of thermodynamics. In this session, I'm going to introduce you the second statement for the second law of thermodynamics. This statement, which is called Clausius statement, actually has some similarity with the uh, Kelvin Planck statement and some differences. This statement is more for the refrigerator and air conditioning systems, while the Kelvin Planck statement was more related to the heat engine and steam power plant. Actually, this statement is it is impossible to construct a device that operates in a cycle and produces no effect other than the transfer of heat from a lower temperature body to a higher temperature body, or some a device like what you can see in this figure. If you notice in this figure, W net in is 0. In other words, this device can absorb energy from a lower temperature body and transfer it to a warmer temperature body without any energy input to the machine. So, according to this statement, it is not possible actually to have such a devices. This device actually violate the second law of thermodynamics. And you know the reason? Because without this WNet in actually, we cannot transfer this thermal energy from uh, lower temperature body to higher temperature body. This is actually equivalent with the other statement, the Kelvin Planck statement, and we will see in next slide how we can compare them. But uh, the main important thing about this statement is this external power source. In other words, this statement says that without any external power, we cannot transfer this thermal energy from the lower temperature body to higher temperature body. So we need to have an external power source like an electric motor. For example, in refrigerators, we need electricity or electric motor to run the compressor and then uh, transfer this thermal energy from the lower temperature body to the higher temperature body. And this is important thing. And later we will see what is similarity between this and the first statement actually. And up to now, these uh, laws, both of these two statements, uh, however, these two statements, the Kelvin Planck and this Clausius statement, are negative statement. If you notice, in other words, it is the manner or the definition of the second law of thermodynamics by these two statements means there is not possibility. So there is now not possibility to create a machine with this characteristic, for example. So they are negative sentences. But up to now, many efforts and in lots of experiments, these two statements actually have been proved. So these two statements or this second law of thermodynamics is widely accepted and it is a common and famous law of thermodynamics, which we cannot actually, according to the Kelvin Planck, we cannot create a machine with 100% efficiency. And according to the Clausius statement, we cannot transfer heat from the lower temperature body to higher temperature body without any external power. So up to now, no machine, no devices has been created to violate these two statements. So this is enough proof to enough to prove both of these two statements, and this is the reason why these two statements are accepted widely. Actually, how these two statements actually are similar or are equivalent. Let's see with an example. Imagine we have this refrigerator. This is a combination of the heat engine refrigerator. Actually, the heat engine receives QH from high temperature reservoir, and it operates like this QH from this heat source, then produce W net, and its efficiency is 100%. All of the QH which it receives is converted to the useful work, or W net, which is equal to QH. And in our refrigerator, this the refrigerator, we have a refrigerator parallel to this heat engine, which can absorb QL from low temperature source or sink, and transfer it to the high temperature, or to the high temperature source or heat source. But it just receives QL and QH, then the output of that will be QH plus QL. It means only QL actually is transferred. So you can see here is the Kelvin Planck, here is the Clausius. So you can see how these two statements actually are equivalent. If we can have a machine like this, which is not possible, for sure we can have a device like this, which also it is not possible. This is Kelvin Planck statement, this is Clausius statement. And you can see, if we can have a heat engine like this, we can have also refrigerator like this. But unfortunately, we cannot have none of these uh, devices. First one, due to the violation of the first law, Kelvin Planck statement. Second one, due to violation of the second law of thermodynamics, Clausius statement actually. And same here, which this is actually the illustration of this one. You can see here uh, that if we can have a device like this, it means it should be some device like this, a refrigerator, which without any power source actually can transfer heat from low temperature reservoir to high temperature reservoir. Up to now, no devices like this is invented, or actually is experimentally proved to work in such a cycle. So you can see here how these two are equivalent. Both of these two statements, both of them are popular statements for define of second law of thermodynamics, and both of them are actually are accepted to define second law of thermodynamics. And mm, finally, in conclusion, actually, any device that violates the Kelvin Planck statement also violate Clausius statement, and vice versa. So actually, these two statements are equivalent. However, as I said, we cannot have a device with 100% efficiency, or a device which without any external power source can uh, transfer that thermal energy actually, or work without any external power source. Many researchers throughout all history of this science, this thermodynamic science, have been trying to create a machine with 100% efficiency, or to create a machine which can work without any external power source. And really, to be honest, it is really tempting, because if we can create a machine like that without any external power source, we can solve the energy requirement problem actually for all of the human beings and society, and it is really valuable uh, invention, and it will be very interesting. But according to what I told you in previous slide, we cannot have such a machine. This is due to the if violation of the second law of thermodynamics actually, or a machine who create energy. As I said earlier, in first law of thermodynamics, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can be only transferred from chemical form to the other form of the energy. So these devices, which have been already proposed, however, they have not been experimentally proved, but there is lots of proposal and invention actually about this type of machine, which we call them perpetual motion machines. Machines which can permanently work without any external energy source. But none of them are actually experimentally working, and none of them is commercially available. Just a few number of the, or actually many numbers of the proposal for invention of these type of devices. There is two problem with this kind of devices, which some of them violate the first law of thermodynamics, which in these devices it is supposed that energy is created by itself, and some of them will violate the second law of thermodynamics. According to the which one of these laws of thermodynamics is violated by that machine which is invented, or at least it is proposed, we call them PMM1 and PMM2. PMM1 is a perpetual motion machine that violates the first law, and PMM2 is a perpetual motion machine that violates the second law of thermodynamics, which none of them can work actually. There is lots of, as I said, uh, uh, proposal, invention, but none of them work experimentally. And from a year, I think in 1918, in the US especially, they refused to accept this kind of the invention or patent proposal actually, and they do not accept any proposal related to this perpetual motion machine, because a few knowledge about thermodynamics will give us enough information that we cannot have a machine which violate the first or second law of thermodynamics, as I which I already discussed about them, why we cannot have a machine which the with that machine violate first law or second law of thermodynamics. Here you can see two examples actually. The first one is a power plant. You can see here we don't have any external power source. We have turbine, condenser, pump, and also boiler. But in the boiler, we do not have any external power source. Only we put a resistant heater inside the boiler, which the power or electric power for this resistant heater comes from a generator which is attached to the turbine of this power plant. In other words, the required power to run this power plant is generated inside the power plant. And according to the first law of thermodynamics, you know that we cannot have such a machine, because here, as you can see, we don't have any external. Here is our system. You can see we don't have any external source of the power, and power which is generated here is used inside the system, which is not possible according to the first law of thermodynamics. Here, power is or energy actually is generated not transferred. So it is against or violate first law of thermodynamics. Because of that, we call this PMM1. Here we have another example, which is for PMM2, which perpetual machine or perpetual motion machine, which violates second law of thermodynamics. As you can see here in this example, again, we have a power plant, turbine, boiler, and pump, but we remove the condenser. And instead of that, we just use the, the heat which after turbine need to be released to the surrounding or to the heat sink or condenser as input for boiler. So in other words, we don't have any Q dot L or Q dot out as we discussed earlier for a power plant, which is against the second law of thermodynamics. If you remember, I have already discussed about that. Without Q dot L, we cannot have a cyclic device with those reasons which I have mentioned in previous slide. So these perpetual motion machines actually are against first law or second law of thermodynamics, and according to that, we call them PMM1 and PMM2. So why there is still, if you go on the web, you can find such some different proposals, some different invention, strange invention actually, to reach this kind of devices, the perpetual motion machine, because it is really tempting, and moreover, most of the inventors do not have enough knowledge from thermodynamics. Even students with a few knowledge about first law and second law of thermodynamics is aware about these two laws, and if consider each one of these machine, will understand that we cannot have this machine because of those reasons, because they will violate first law or second law of thermodynamics. And this is actually this sentence. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Later, now let's see a video that explain more, actually, interesting video to explain, which explain more about this perpetual motion machine, because it is really interesting topic. However, we do not have any perpetual motion machine, but for sure, if you are aware about the energy and how much energy is important, how much we are interested to reduce the cost, how much it costs air pollution, global warming, this climate change, and so on, then you will be interested to create a machine like this with 100% efficiency, or a machine which can produce energy without any external force. So let's see in a video uh, what is the story of this perpetual motion, and see some real patent or invention related to this perpetual machine.
What if I told you I built a machine that creates energy? My ingenious design works like this. As the wheel turns, the coins fall in the slots so that one side of the wheel is always heavier than the other, which would keep pulling that side down and the wheel would never stop turning. Without so much as a push, this wheel would spin forever.
Think about the possibilities. I could build a giant fleet of wind turbines that turn without wind to power the entire Earth. We wouldn't have to burn fossil fuels anymore. This could solve climate change.
So let's see it in action. Or not, because it doesn't actually work. You may have seen this wheel before, and there's a reason it doesn't work. Well, physics, but also friction here on the axle, which will eventually stop any wheel from continuing to spin. But then there's also gravity. So what I said earlier about one side of the wheel being heavier than the other was misleading, because of the way gravity works on wheels. Imagine a regular wheel. Its center of mass is at the center of the wheel. Now imagine a wheel with a single coin in it. It might swing back and forth a couple times, but it won't rotate. Add a second coin. Add a third coin. The wheel swings back and forth, slowing down until it stops where the center of gravity is at its lowest position. Always. So the unbalanced wheel will swing back and forth like a sad pendulum until friction wins. This wheel is a perpetual motion machine, a device that is supposed to move without any energy.
But by far the most persistent dream of inventors has been to get something for nothing. That is, to create a machine that will start itself, overcome all friction, and still have enough power left to do useful work. In short, perpetual motion machines.
In countless instances in history, people have claimed they've made a perpetual motion machine. Bhaskara's unbalanced mercury wheel in the 1100s, Zaimara's self-blowing windmill in the 1500s, the capillary bowl where capillary action forces the water upwards, the Oxford electric bell which ticks back and forth due to charge repulsion, and so on. In fact, the US Patent Office stopped granting patents for perpetual motion machines without a working prototype. The reason you've never heard of Cox's timepiece and you don't power your smartphone with a capillary bowl is that perpetual motion machines are the snake oil of physics. They are impossible. This is the classic drinking bird toy. It tips itself into a glass of water and then rights itself and then tips again over and over, looking forever thirsty. Where's the source of energy? At room temperature, inside the bird is part liquid and part vapor. The bird contains a substance called dichloromethane, the same stuff in this little toy, which boils at a much lower temperature than water. When the bird dips its beak into the water, the bird's top cools down. Because of the ideal gas law, PV equals NKT, the pressure in the tube at the top of the bird is lower than the pressure in the bottom of the bird. This pressure difference pushes the liquid into the top of the head. The toy gets top heavy and tips over. When the bird tips over, the bottom of the tube is exposed to the vapor, which rises up and pushes the liquid back into the bottom. The bird stands up and the cycle continues. But it's not perpetual motion. There is an energy source making this bird drink over and over, but it's hard to spot. The energy source for the bird is the ambient heat in the room. Bear with me. The water cooled the bird's beak, creating a temperature difference between the top and bottom, and that caused the pressure difference that made the liquid flow to the top and tipped the bird over. When the pressure equalized, the top and bottom of the bird became the same temperature, but slightly cooler than it started out. Then the room warms the bird up again, and that's where we see our energy source. This back and forth between pressure and temperature is what causes Earth's weather. And though it seems like weather and wind and storms never stop, they're powered by the sun's heat. So even Earth's weather isn't a perpetual motion machine. Now, there's a more fundamental reason why these machines are impossible, and it's called the law of conservation of energy, which states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Energy never comes for free. If you see a machine producing motion, heat, light, or another form of energy, keep looking for the energy source. I repeat, keep looking for the energy source. So now you know, if anyone tells you they've built a perpetual motion machine, tell them to peddle their wares elsewhere. Thank you so much for watching.
It's all very simple, and so are you if you think it'll work.
You can't get something for nothing.